Hey guys, welcome back to another impressions video, this time around for Xenoblade Chronicles 2 on the Nintendo Switch, a game that I was eagerly anticipating. Obviously, the first Xenoblade Chronicles game on the Nintendo Wii is one of my favorite RPGs of all time, so as you know, it's obvious that I was looking forward to this game with a lot of anticipation, and the game is finally here, and 95 hours later, I can finally say I beat the game. Obviously not to a complete standard. I'm far from 100% completing this game. Obviously, there's a ton of things that you can do in this game, but 95 hours later, I was able to beat the main story, and I can definitely say I had a very good time with this game. I think it's a very good RPG, but I cannot help but feel a slightly disappointed in the sense that the first Xenoblade Chronicles set the bar very high for me personally, and so this game doesn't quite reach the heights of that game, which is okay. You know, there's a reason why the first Xenoblade Chronicles game is always mentioned, you know, among the top RPGs of all time and whatnot. It's because that game had an excellent story combined with an excellent soundtrack, excellent character development, excellent characters, excellent combat system, the design, the graphics for being a Wii game, and when you combine all those elements, you have this very masterful JRPG. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 does a lot of good things, but in my opinion, the strengths are not obviously on par with those of the first Xenoblade Chronicles 1. There are, I think, certain things that this game does better than the first game, but the first game does way more things in a positive manner than the second one. Hence why I hate using the word disappointed, but that's kind of how I felt as I was playing this game. The game does get better. I think the game has a little bit of a slow start in my opinion, but I think towards the end the story gets way more interesting, and the overall package here, it's a very solid and very good RPG. As far as the story, me personally, I think that's one of the strongest suits in this game. In typical Xeno faction, the story is somewhat complicated. It's going to require for you to think a lot. There's a lot of events and names that you have to remember. But similarly to Xenoblade Chronicles 1, this is a very mature story that deals. It's way more than what the game shows you at the beginning. You know, at the beginning, you have the impression that you just want to find out what's going on in Alrest, which is the world that the game takes place on. You have these titans where they basically house entire cities on their backs. The titans, and they're slowly dying, and you kind of want to find out why that is happening. And then through your work, being a salvager, you run into this set of weird characters that hire you for this particular mission, and that's how you run into your first blade in the game, and that's how you decide to find this mythical place of Elysium to aid one of the main protagonists, the main blade in this game, which you unlock obviously very early into the game. So that's kind of like the basic story. I thought it was interesting, but as you progress throughout the game, obviously things get way more interesting. And I think by the time you finish the game, it may be a little bit of a confusing story, a lot of things happening, a lot of events, a lot of names to keep track. But overall, I thought the story was very good. And again, it's a very mature story in the sense that deals a lot with mature themes, like war. It's not on the same level as Xenoblade Chronicles 1. I think that story is far better. It's far more mature, again, in the sense that it touches on things like, politics and simple things like a love relationship, but also social inequality, religion, war, and politics, and things like that. I thought the first Xenoblade Chronicles had a more well-rounded and better story, but nevertheless, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 managed to impress me in that particular department. As far as graphics, this is where I had a big gripe from the get-go with this game, and I have to admit I was a little bit rooting against the game just because of that sour taste that that first Nintendo Direct, when they first unveiled this game and they showed a little bit of gameplay footage. I was very disappointed on the art direction of this game. This game has like an anime, cartoon type of look that it's much more. I don't want to use the word childish, but it's just like a more anime looking and less mature than the first Xenoblade Chronicles game. So right from the get-go, I was a little bit upset on that direction they went after. So I have to admit, I already had a small gripe from the get-go against this game, but I'm happy to report that, you know, after playing this game, I think the graphics themselves are really good. You know, the cell shaded / anime you know, type of art direction. They go very well hand in hand. The game has this feeling of, you know, kind of like watching an anime, and you know, overall I think that the graphics are pretty good in this game for being a Nintendo Switch game. We all know of the limitations of the hardware here, but it's just the art direction that rubbed me in the wrong way. I would have preferred for this to have a more mature direction, similar to the first Xenoblade Chronicles 1. But as we know, the Xenoblade or the Xenoblade games that have been released on the Nintendo systems, Chronicles X and now Chronicles 2, they all have their own little differences in terms of art direction. I think Chronicles X, that game also has its big issues in terms of, you know, the faces, they look weird. So I'm a big fan of the first Xenoblade Chronicles 1 art direction, and in that regard I was a little bit disappointed. This is more of an anime style game, and you know, since we're talking about the art direction of the characters, let's talk a little bit about the characters. And this is an area where I think it's one of the lowest or the most disappointing parts of the game. I think the cast is strong, they're likable, but they're far from being an optimal party of characters for an RPG. I feel like a lot of the party members there's no like true chemistry going on in between them. Like one of the early ones that you unlock, which is Tora, which is the Nopon character in this particular game that's in your party. I feel like his reasoning for joining your party was like very random. He kind of like helps you out. You're being like chased in this particular part of the game very early in the game, and then he helps you, and then you kind of like him, and he's pretty good at experimenting and building things. And yeah, sure, you're in you know, you're in the party. Come along, let's go on this big adventure. So I don't know. I think like there's no some characters just don't gel together. Tora was particularly annoying in my opinion, which is kind of weird because I was fine with Riki on Xenoblade Chronicles 1. He was annoying, but in a like good way. Like I don't know how to explain it. Like he fit better with that group of characters better than Tora did with the characters in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, for example. I enjoyed Rex. I think he was a very nice character despite his young age. I think he presented himself as a very mature, very decisive type of character. So I really enjoyed his personality in this game. And you know, the blade for Tora, you know, Poppy, I thought she was a little bit annoying with the whole, you know, like the whole anime thing. I don't know, it just threw me off. It was cringeworthy. And then this is the part that I know a lot of people are gonna hate, but I really hated the main blade in this. I didn't hate her. I thought her personality was good, but it was her looks. I'm talking about Pyra, which, you know, she was always wearing not a whole lot, basically showing a lot of attributes, basically. And it's not like I'm offended because from a moral point of view or from a like religious point of view. Oh no, you know, you're showing too much. You know, I don't want to see any of that. It's just from a like cringe-worthy factor. You know, it's like it's just, the way she's dressed, and not only her, a lot of the blades in this game that you unlock, they're all the same. It's like they're designed to wow the player, and I much rather have a mature female presence. And if I had to throw an example, I don't know, like in Is Origin, Unica, for example, like she is the way she's presented is very mature, very humble. She's not showing any big attributes per se, which is the complete opposite in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. The way the camera in each cinematic sequence, you can tell what they're trying to do. I don't know. It was just very, very cringe-worthy, and I was just shaking my head in a lot of the parts in the game, and that really affected my immersion with this game. Again, it's not that I'm offended because of from a religious point of view. Oh my God, you're showing too much. It's just cringeworthy. It's just why are you guys doing this? It's bad in my opinion. So that's something that I kind of miss from other RPGs, where I think the representation of female characters is much better done. So with that out of the way, I thought the main blade, Pyra, she was a little bit annoying, and a lot of the other rare blades in the game are the same thing. They're showing a lot of things, and it's a little bit ridiculous. So that really hurt my immersion in the game as far as the characters and the character development, because every time there's a cinematic sequence, you know what you were gonna basically see in those cinematic sequences. But let's focus on a little bit more of the positive things in this game. The soundtrack, I thought it was very solid. Not on par with Xenoblade Chronicles 1, but again, we have a lot of pretty good themes, like themes with the piano themes. Even the main theme, I thought it was very relaxing to listen to every time you booted the game up. The title screen, and a lot of the areas in the game, just a very solid soundtrack, and I wouldn't mind downloading them or listening to them again, because there's a lot of good stuff in there, good songs. I think Yoko Shimomura and other well-renowned RPG composers are part of this soundtrack, and that doesn't surprise me, the level of quality for this game. As far as the combat system, this is, in my opinion, the highest point, and this is perhaps the only point in this game that it exceeded versus the first Xenoblade Chronicles. I think the combat system is a little bit more elaborate. It's very similar to the first Xenoblade Chronicles 1 in the sense that you can do your break, your topples, you break, guard, topple, and then you have your chain attacks that you can activate, and you have your different party members attacking based on the order of the chain attack and things like that. But I feel like this was a little bit more elaborate, a little bit more complex, but once you get a good grip, I think it was a very addicting combat system that I really enjoyed. The negative thing, the cool thing about this is that you can use your elemental attributes, and based on that you can do several levels of. You have your chain attack is basically a combination of all these special moves that you do. So you have to build up 1, 2, 3, and then you can unleash. You impose a seal on the enemy. And then you can have up to, I don't know how many seals, but you can have elemental seals surrounding the enemy, and that's when you're unleashed your chain attack, and you can create massive damage. And it's just very satisfying once everything comes together, and you unleash a lot of damage. I guess one of the main problems with the combat system for this particular game is that, yes, it takes a while, even for weak enemies. I think the combat system is very slow, which is something that a lot of people complain about. I don't blame them. Me particularly, I did not have a problem, but just be aware that the combat system in this game is indeed very slow. Even with weak enemies, there's no such thing as just plowing through a set of weak enemies, unless the level difference is drastic. Between you and the enemy. But if it's only a few levels, expect to be fighting for a couple minutes, even though your enemy is weaker. Myself, I enjoy doing that because I enjoyed all the cinematics and exploring different blades, their different attributes, unlocking different battle skills. And it gets addicting once you see that battles skills tree, and then you just want to unlock more skills. And there's this particular blade in this game that you get much later. She's kind of like a main blade and a main protagonist, and she's a healer. And once you start unlocking her true like battle skills, she becomes like unstoppable. She heals enemies in a passive manner, like without even you using arts. She's just auto attacking and healing, and auto attacking and healing your driver, and she's insanely crazy and very good. So it's very rewarding watching your blades, gathering all these skills, field skills, combat skills, and then just going out there and destroying the enemies. It's just very fun and very rewarding. But I do understand the critiques that are saying that the combat system is a little bit long. The one thing that I hated about this game, and it's the AI, the enemy design. A lot of cheap boss fights in this game, so just be wary of that. Where a lot of boss fights, you reduce their health below the halfway point, and then they unleash out of nowhere an attack that one hit kills your entire party. So you can either over level or grind and be of a higher level, which is a little bit annoying in this game. Grinding in this game can be very annoying because of the nature of this slow combat system. So you can either do that, or you have to be either very good at doing the chain attacks and putting seals on your enemies and whatnot. So just be wary that you have to be very proficient as far as the combat and understanding the weaknesses of the bosses and the enemies in order to succeed in a frustration-free type of way. If you guys are not very proficient with the battle system, I think you guys are gonna either suffer, or you're gonna have to spend a lot of time grinding to get through the boss battles, which is a little bit unfortunate, because I think the first Xenoblade game had a little bit more leeway. You did not have to master the combat system in that game. You did not have to master the chain link attacks and what have you in order to fully beat the game, really. So in this game, expect to see that a lot of annoying boss battles where they just one hit kill your party, but the more time you spend knowing your blades, the more time you spend unlocking the different combat skills, it'll become easier, obviously. So those are the main gripes that I have with this game. Namely some of the cheap boss fights, which again can be solved by mastering the combat system or grinding, and then the overall character development in this game. There are some good character developments between certain characters in your party, but there's some party members that just don't jive together, and that, in my opinion, broke the immersion a little bit. But the cool components also in this game are the blades, which they're kind of like the Pokemon aspect of this game, where you can have different blades with different attributes, different elemental attributes. You can have fire blades, electric-based blades, wind, ice, ground or earth, however that element is called in the game. So it's very fun exploring the different attacks, the different arts that you can level up, and assign your blade to attack, and then creating the combos and the chains and whatnot. It's just a very fun game that offers a lot of replay value. Of course, you have a million side quests in there, which, by the way, it leads me to another critique of the game. I thought the side quests were very weak in this game. A lot of them build way too much. They're way too developed. Certain side quests in the game may start with like a very easy task, such as, go get me this thing, or go kill 2 or 3 enemies, and then come back to me. And then they're like multi-level side quests where you have to do an errand and then come back to the NPC, and then he gives you another errand, and then you have to come back. But the problem is that some of them have like 5 or 6 different things that you have to do, and when you get to that 4th or 5th or 6th or final step, they require you to get like very rare items or defeat a very over leveled like enemy out there. So a lot of the early side quests ended up being like incomplete for me personally, because they require like super rare items that you have to grind for, or you have to go out there and look for items. So I did finish a fair chunk of side quests, but I thought the way they were set up, it was really annoying. So that's another small gripe that I have with this game, the way that the side quests were set up. But overall, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, it's a very solid RPG. It's a good RPG. It's not excellent. I think you know, the first one on the Wii, obviously it's a masterpiece in my eyes. But nevertheless, if you guys own a Nintendo Switch, this is definitely a game for you guys to try and enjoy it. If you guys are RPG enthusiasts, I'm sure you'll find a lot of enjoyment, like a lot of my friends here on YouTube did, where to the point where they chose this as their #1 game of 2017. I was actually surprised that a lot of the people that I know here have gone that route. So anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all later.